Okay, Jasmine, could you go back one slide? Okay, there we go. So guys, you remember last week we left off uh, around this area. We talked about the home buying process. This slide is right after the slide that we say it was a very valuable slide where we explained to them all of the benefits of home buyer, about home buying, all of the ways they can amortize their mortgage. We talked to them about the tax benefits and all of those things. And now you jump right into the process because by that time they should be ready to go. They should be excited. They should be eager. They should not have the fear of writing checks and how much money they're gonna spend. I mean, it's still going to be there. Don't think that this is the cure all, but we've developed some concepts in their minds, some strategies for them to overcome their fear. We talked about the big bag of money that Mr. Cooper is giving to them. So all of these things are very important, and you incorporate stories. People love hearing stories. So if you incorporate stories in your buyer's consultation, it generally puts them at ease. They understand, they get the big picture, they know that this is something that they want to do. It's something that they have to do um, for their family. And so what you're doing is just making your pathway really, really easy because it can be very difficult working with buyers if you don't um, kind of set the groundwork. And Curtis, I know you can chime in on that.
Yeah, it's definitely very important for you guys to, out the gate, you're just really laying down the foundation of how the process is going to roll. The good thing about doing that too is that as the process starts to happen, you're under contract, you need to do the home inspection, you need the EMD check. Once these things start to happen too, it just really positions you and just makes you, just look more professional. You know what you were talking about.
You've already told them all of the things that were going to happen. So when they start to happen after you get a ratified contract, it's really not a question as to whether or not they're going to put their earnest money deposit, how much the earnest money deposit is. They're going to remember that 1%. They're going to remember that they owe the brokerage $7.95 if they haven't paid it for you at the table. And I love what Kermon said. If you do it correctly, they'll write the check right there, then and there at the table. Now, that being said, just let them know we don't take personal checks in Port House, so they're going to have to get a cashier's check anyway. But we can't take a credit card payment. We can't take cash. So, but we don't do credit. I mean, we don't do personal checks. It's not a good thing all the time. But anyway, that being said, on this buyer's contract, don't overlook the 1031. That's the Porterhouse secret formula. Now, does that mean that every client you get, they're gonna narrow the houses down from 10 and then go C3 and write offers on one? Absolutely not. But you set the tone for what your expectation is for your clients. You set the tone for your clients that, hey, I need you to focus. I need to be focused with you, and you need to focus with me so that we can get you the house that you said you wanted. So we can't go see 10, 20, 50 houses, and you can. You don't want to. You don't want to spend your time like that, but you really want to give them that energy. You want to give them that focus. You want to give them that information so that they can incorporate it in whatever decisions that they make. You want to put the pressure on them in a sense to let them know, hey, this is a seller's market. We have to move with speed. We have to be focused, and we have to write an offer because remember, we have contingencies built into the contract that can help a client get out of the offer if for some reason that property is not going to work for them. But we can't get them in the offer once that property's gone. So we want them to go see the three that they absolutely love out of the big ball of wax, out of the ones that they saw. They narrowed it down to 10. If it was a husband and wife, I tell the husband to give 5 and the wife to give 5. And generally I tell them, I say, hey, and husband, you're not going to get the 5 you want, so you might as well focus on her 5, narrow that down to 3, give me a call. I'll set up the schedule and we'll go out and we're going to write an offer on one of them. Sound good? And most of the time they say, let's do it. They're ready. They're excited.
You know, what's interesting is I have a potential buyer that I'm working with now. He's finalizing his financing, and I was already hitting him with a lot of these same things. Just already prepping them and letting them know how aggressive the market is, And then it was funny because he made a comment and he was like, I was wondering why, I've been looking around on different sites and whatnot. And he's like, and I've seen a house that, looked nice and then it's gone like within a few days. And I'm like, that's the market I'm talking about, So a lot of buyers too that, they see things, they just don't realize. So then I'm able to, pretty much teach them, let them know like, this is what's happening. This is why that's happening. It might come back on the market. The financing fell through, all these things that he's going to eventually, encounter anyway. But it just, again, it's me already starting to lay that, that process and what's going to happen. Yeah.
And just to get to that, and just to further articulate that point, illustrate that point, for those of you who were on Realty Talks today at 12:30, you heard us talking about the listing that Jasmine put on the market, I think Friday. And over the weekend, there were 46 showings on this listing. And we got 18 offers. And the majority of the offers that we received were overpriced offers. So that just kind of demonstrates. So the people that lived in the house, they basically couldn't go home for over the weekend till after showing time because it was back-to-back showings. So to get 46 showings in a 2-day period, that's
crazy.
the kind of market. That's the kind of market. And this property wasn't an expensive property. It was just like a 350 or I don't know, somewhere around that mark. But it was an expensive listing at all. But to get that many showings, you're going to get a ton of offers. And so you have to let your client know this is the competition that you're going to deal with. Some people, if you say it incorrectly, it will kind of take the steam out of them. But if you say it in a way like, but we got to be competitive, you have, you're pre-approved for 400. So we're going to maximize your pre-approval. We're going to write, and we're going to talk about that more in writing when it offers strategies to make sure that your contract is at the front and at the top of the list. Okay. So the 1031 is very important. Your earnest money deposit, we said to at least do the minimum 1% earnest money deposit. And now, and we're going to talk about this in a few minutes, even with writing a winning offer, and I'll just give you a preview, we're saying to add an additional 1% if they accept your offer. So that's going to help you distinguish your client. So instead of writing a $3,500 earnest money deposit, tell them to write two $3,500 earnest money deposit. One, to present with the offer, and then another enticement that if you accept my offer, I'm going to put another $3,500 in escrow right away. So that's really powerful, and it's been working. So we can go to the next slide, Jasmine. We talked about the process, and we'll work you through the process, which is great. And the good thing about this is once you get ratified and you put the transaction into BrokerMint system, and it's real simple. BrokerMint has a lot of videos and real easy to set up a transaction, and you add your buyer's checklist, it's going to tell you what to do and when to do it. And if you don't do it, it's going to turn red.
Yep.
It's going to let you know you're missing out on something. Go ahead, Curtis.
Hey, real quick, Shay. So this is so in between the EMD were ratified. Now, this is a very, very important comment to make when you're talking buyer consultation, you're going through everything. You want to let them know that the earnest money deposit is kind of their essential, their first down payment, on the house. They're putting skin in the game, but you're going to need an official cashier check from them to secure the EMD, right? But I'm also going to need you to get another check, and that check is going to be for the brokerage fee. So once we're ratified, if just say you weren't able to get your admin fee, your brokerage fee up front, I'll let them know, like, okay, if you can't pay the $795 now, that's absolutely no problem. Once we're under contract, though, you're gonna have to get your EMD check. I'm gonna need you to get another check. So I need two checks when you go to get the EMD, the one for the EMD amount and the other for the brokerage fee. And you just keep everything moving. It's $795. They see it. You let them know. If there's any pushback hard about that, hey, no worries. We'll just add the brokerage fee in to when you go to closing. So it'll just come out then. But typically, I've been burnt. Like I've like, that that 795, I know sometimes, especially as newer agents, you're going to feel that like that apprehension of like, I don't know, are they going to look? I need 2 checks. I need an earnest money deposit cashier check for that amount, and I'm gonna need a 795 brokerage fee check, and you just keep everything moving. You know, very, very important, guys.
And very well said, Curtis. 99% of the times they're not going to have a problem with getting all of the funds they need because they're going to be excited to be ratified. We've already prepped them that they're going to write some big checks that they've never written before. And please, and you guys in business, do not be afraid to ask for your money. And Curtis said he's been burnt. Let me explain what Curtis is talking about. In many transactions, if you don't collect this brokerage fee up front, and keep in mind that a brokerage fee comes off of every transaction that we process in Porterhouse. So if you come to Porterhouse and you're getting your check, there's going to be a brokerage fee, $4.95, taken off of your statement. So we want you to collect that money up front plus. So you get that $7.95 up front. We're going to give it to you as almost as a retainer fee for you to use for whatever purposes you want. No broker does that. No broker gives somebody we need to mute. I don't know who that is. Let's see. I'm sorry, guys. We got to mute somebody. Okay. All right. Sorry for the feedback. So we're going to give you that $7.95 if you turn it in when you get ratified. We'll just cut you a check right away, and then you have that $7.95 in your possession to do whatever you want to with it. Because the idea is that you're going to be charged the $4.95 fee at the end of the transaction. So it's already taken care of. You've already gotten your money, and you've gotten a little bit more than what you would have gotten had you just let it go to settlement. Now, what Curtis was saying when he said he got burnt, in many transactions, especially if it's on a short sale or if it's a VA buyer, or if there's something that pops up, say for instance on a lien on the seller's property, they're going to then come back and say, "Hey, realtors, we need you to give some money up." So you can't collect your $7.95. We're going to take that off immediately. That's the first money they're going to come after.
Absolutely coming. They coming for.
If you have so if you've collected it up front, then that's not something they're going to come after because you're not even asking for that because you've already collected it. Very important to know because then what if the transaction fails? You got to start all over working with this client. And if you hadn't done it the way we prescribed for you to do, you walked away with nothing but an experience. At least you got $7.95, even if the transaction falls through. And I dare say, and Curtis, you can speak on your experience. I dare say that 99% of our clients that pay that $7.95 up front, they're going to closing. So all of these things that we put in place here at Porterhouse are to not only benefit your success as a real estate agent, but they benefit you. And it also ensures that your client has enough skin in the game that they're not going to be doing anything to interrupt the transaction, and they want to get to the settlement table. And that's a wonderful thing. And I just hope you guys, if you have any apprehension about the $7.95, get over it. Let it go. The client doesn't mind paying it.
Yep.
They don't mind doing whatever you ask them to do, provided that you've already articulated to them up front what it is that they're going to be expected to do if they want to buy a home through this process. And I want you guys to be smart enough to make sure that you are supporting not just the client, but you got to support your business. It's frightening to me when people don't have anything to operate with. And you collect your fees, and we're going to turn those fees over to you and give them right back to you. You collect the rental fee, you're going to get it right back in a check. Okay, you collect that $7.95, you're going to get it right back in a check. But if it comes in at the end, also, Curtis, tell her what happens. Then it goes through the whole process and is lumped in with your commission, and we take the percentage off of that.
Yep.
So I want you to get your money. So get it up front, guys. Don't be afraid to ask for your money up front.
But it is if you do have to wait, I'd rather the home go to closing and I get the $7.95. Then the home doesn't, they don't buy a house.
Exactly.
But don't be afraid to ask for it.
Yeah, you don't want to make that. That's not what your focus is. Your focus is not the $7.95. We've had agents be more concerned about the $7.95 than anybody else. The buyers aren't concerned. So
Yeah.
we like to say, hey, get over it, let it go. Just explain what you're doing, explain what your prices is, be upfront, disclose, and just let it and just have your transaction be a success. And like Curtis said, if that becomes a stumbling block of $795 in a $200,000, $300,000 transaction becomes a stumbling block for your buyer, we haven't done you haven't done a good job. We haven't done a good job training you on how to use this buyer's consultation. It shouldn't be a stumbling block. So that I think we've said enough about it. I just want to make sure if anybody has any questions, call me because we have to get you past that point because look at all the other numbers uh, that are going to happen. Why should you not, as a real estate agent, collect your fees? And I'm gonna say that we feel strongly about that, and we've learned, and this is just all for the newbies and anybody who's been around for a while. You can probably verify this. The funny thing about real estate is that the realtor brings the client to the table, especially working with buyers. We groom the buyer, we work with the buyer, we spend all the time with the buyer, we bring the buyer to the lender. The lender gets a pre-approval, and the lender's going to make some money off of the buyer. He didn't have that buyer before we brought him to him. We bring that buyer to the title company. The title company is happy to accept him and work with him and everything. But let anything go wrong towards the end of that transaction, and there's not enough money on the table, everybody gets alligator arms and they look at the realtor like, are you going to help your buyer close this transaction? Are you willing to give up some of your commission? And at Porterhouse, of course, we're willing to do it, but we say, can we see what we can do? So we go to the lender and we say, hey, lender, can you give a credit to this client? And if you're working with an outside lender that we don't know and recommend, they're probably going to tell you absolutely not. We don't do that. Michael Cooper, he gives lender credits that blow my mind to this day. Okay. If you ask the title company, they'll probably say, we don't do that. We can't give up any of our money. But we work with Velocity and they'll say, hey, we can take off this or we can do that. We'll waive this fee. That's going to get you closer to the number. Then they'll say, well, Porterhouse, how much are you willing to contribute? And the first thing that we want you to say is, you know what? We can give $795 because you've already collected the $795. See, so you say just take the $795 off of my transaction. It's gonna pinch a little bit, but it's not gonna bite. Okay. So we want you to be smart enough to recognize to close the transaction. Always close the transaction. Get them to the table, close the transaction. If they start trying to dig into your pockets a little bit, give Mr. Porter, give me a call, give Jasmine a call. We're going to help you navigate that because they always come to the realtor first. And that's a no-no. We don't play that game at Porterhouse. You cannot build your business if every transaction you're giving away money. Okay. That being said, there's also a provision in here where we talk about to the client that they sign the buyer agency agreement, it's 3% plus $795. That's the fee that you're charging to the buyer. What happens then is basically you're presenting that to the seller and saying, hey, my buyer owes 3% commission to Porterhouse. Can you pay that commission on behalf? And of course, if they pick this, they got a list and they got 6%. They used to give you 3% of it. They used to give you half of the 6%. About 4 or 5 years ago, they changed it. Somebody changed it, and then everybody changed it. It was like amazing. Nobody communicated about it, but it went to 2.5%. They started only paying 2.5% to the buyer side. So then what happens in 90% of transactions, guys, what 90% of your colleagues may be doing, and that's totally their business. We do not recommend it. We don't condone it, is that they just let the 0.5% go. I don't know if you guys know what a 0.5%. A 0.5% could mean $1,500 on every single transaction. If you guys have $1,500 to give away on every transaction, I can show you how to use it. But we don't recommend that. What you're supposed to do is send over, when you send a ratified contract over, make sure that you, in the email to the lender and the title company, because you send the ratified contract over to the lender and the title company, say, here's a ratified contract for our client, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer. Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer, their emails are attached. Please add 0.5% commission to the buyer's commission that they owe Porterhouse. You want to articulate that at the beginning of that communication after you get a ratified contract to the title company and to the lender so that they can add it into the altar. So they're going to take off the 2.5%, but they're going to make sure that the buyer has to bring that additional 0.5% to the table as settlement. Very important for you to do that.
And that's something also that that document is in Brokerment, so it's nothing that you guys have to actually like create. It's in there under your, you know, all
difference in commission.
Yeah, it's in there. But what I'll do is when I'm talking about the EMD, talking about, you know, I'm gonna have the seller basically pays for my commission. You're just responsible for $795. However, you know, if there's a situation that the seller is only offering 2.5%, then I am going to need you to bring that other 0.5%. But you're not going to come out of your pocket for that right now. That's just going to be added into your closing documents, right? So you disclosed it. They're aware of what's happening. And then what I do is, like, when I send the offer over for their signatures on everything, so I wrote it up, got all my, you know, all my stuff's in there, I'll just attach that document, that addendum.
It's called the difference in commission.
Commission.
And then that's addendum that we've created, but the verbiage is literally taken directly out of section 7A of the buyer brokerage agreement, the buyer agency agreement. Mm-hmm. So it's not anything that we've created outside. We just copied that information that's already in the buyer agency agreement that you have, and we've just made a separate document that, as a reminder, hey, there was a situation, as Curtis said, where the buyer only paid 2.5% of your commission, and as we talked about in your buyer agency agreement, there's a 0.5% that's going to be added to your settlement sheet. And that's it. You don't have to say bring it.
Yep.
I don't use those kind of terms, Curtis. They scare people. I say there's a 0.5% that's being added to the altar, and you'll see it on there as an additional commission. That's all it is. And you move on from there. But guys, what I want to stress to you is, as agents, do not take shorts if you don't have to in your settlements. You want to get your buyers to the table at all costs, but make sure that you make sure that you let the lender know and let the title company know, I'm willing to contribute, but I'm not going to be the first and only contributor in this situation. We're all going to benefit. We're all going to share in this. And then sometimes your buyer actually has the money, so it's really not a deal. But if it is a real situation, all we're saying is close the deal, but don't be so generous that you want to just give away your commission, because then it becomes an established norm and a precedence that you set that people will just expect it from you, and they don't expect it at Porterhouse because they know we push back. So that being said, we just want you all to be very aware that this is you're running your own business. You want to make sure that your fees are what they are, and you expect the fees to be paid just like everybody else. All right, that's the bottom line on that. I think we said. Now I'm gonna ask anybody have any questions, because I know we talked about a lot. If anybody have any questions, did we confuse anybody? All right, I'm gonna take the silence as we're okay. All right. Can you still hear me, Curtis? Am I good?
Yeah, you good.
Okay, good. All right, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. All right, so moving through this, we talked about the upfront money and all of that. I think we covered everything in there. But moving through the rest of the buyer's consultation, you can go to the next slide, Jasmine. We get to the 10 commandments. And after you say, okay, in order for this process to work, once you start applying for your commitment, your loan commitment, you can't break any of these 10 commandments. And you just read them to them, and they normally chuckle. Thou shalt not change a job, become self-employed, or quit your job. Thou shalt not buy a car, truck, or a van, or you may be living in it. Thou shalt not use your charge cards excessively or let your accounts fall behind. No applying for, going, when Macy's, you go to Macy's, if you apply for the credit card, they give you 5% discount. Not right now. I'm buying a house. You can't do anything. You don't want anything in their credit report to change. You don't want their credit to drop. You don't want them to miss a payment. You don't want anything to happen that the underwriter is going to gig them on or ding them, because they will pull your credit file. They will pull your bank statements all the way up to the day of the transaction, even while you're right before you go sign your documents. They might, if your settlement is at 2:30, they might pull it at 12 just to see what you're doing with your money. And if they have a problem, they'll flag it. Normally that doesn't happen. You'll get a clear to close, but they can do it. And I've seen it done. All right. Thou shalt not spend money that you set aside for closing. And typically you see that happening around Valentine's Day, birthdays, Christmas, things of that nature. People just they forget that they're buying a house. So you have to say this to them. Okay. And then some people will call you back guilty. Say, I did what you told me not to do. I broke the 10 commandments. They'll tell you, at least if they tell you, you can go back and mitigate it. You can go and say, hey, Mike, we have a problem. Here's what they just told me they did. And Michael Pulley, he said, I can't believe it. I'm gonna work on it, but we might have to buy more time.
That's also one thing that I'll always let people know too. Like, look, if you do need to, use a charge card, or if you have to make some kind of purchase, the dog got sick and you had to go to the vet, make sure that you immediately disclose it to Mike, to your lender, so that they can then adjust and do what they need to do. You don't want it to come out of left field when they're sitting there at closing and now, Fido got sick and they had to charge $400 for a vet bill. But if he knew about it when it happened, he could have kind of taken action to make sure, like, look, that charge popped up. It's because their dog got sick. It wasn't just something random. And real quick, and I use this story all the time. Beyonce came to town. She's not this buyer wasn't my client. Beyonce came to town. She had to go see Beyonce. So she charged some Beyonce tickets. And those Beyonce tickets ain't cheap. So Beyonce was in town. She had to go get a new outfit, charge a new outfit, went and saw Beyonce and lost the home. She had 1 week, and she was going to get the keys to her brand new house. And she went to see Beyonce. They were pulling her credit, making sure vetting her, making sure everything's good. That those charges came up, dinged her, and they kicked the deal out. I don't even know. I don't know if that was you, Shay, or if I just heard that through Cooper. I think Mike might have just but I use the story that it goes back to what Shay's talking to, the stories, and it makes it more personable, and you can laugh about it. Everybody knows them Beyonce tickets. I ain't never seen her, but I probably never will. The Beyonce tickets are a grip. So everybody knows, like Beyonce, that's expensive, and it's relatable. It makes sense to get a little chuckle out of it. But that's I use that one, in the one you told me. Shit, I know that was from you, the guy with the SUV pulled up pulled up the closing in his brand new white Escalade.
It was a Hummer.
Brand
new Hummer. And he was buying the smallest townhouse you ever seen in your life. The pocket space, I don't think could fit a Hummer. But he had that big Hummer. He pulled up, and we could see out the window of the settlement room. When he pulled up, got out, he had a white outfit. His wife had on a white outfit. They had the white glasses, white shoes. They was ready to settle their transaction. Walked in the office, and the settlement lady said, "That's your new Hummer?" She said, "Yeah." He said, "That's beautiful." She said, "When did you get it?" He said, "I just got it this morning." She said, "Oh, well, she wouldn't have told me that." "We can't close your house then. You just opened up a loan. You got to sign a disclosure saying you haven't opened up a new credit account. I can't sign." She said, "Now you can go take it back, and we can reschedule for this afternoon. But if they don't take it back, you're in trouble."
And he lost the house.
He took it back. No, he took it back and came back to settlement in his whatever car he drive, Pinto, I don't know what it was. And he got his house. And I said, "Now you can go get your Hummer."
Now go get the Hummer.
Yeah. Somebody had a question.
Yeah. No, I just wanted. This is Rhonda. Just wanted to state, I actually dealt with that with my client, and we're supposed to go to closing tomorrow. But about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks ago, her transmission went up in her vehicle, and she got 3 kids. So I remember popping over to her house to take her something, and I asked her where her vehicle was, and she was like, my transmission went up. And I was like, oh, so what are you gonna do? Girl, we getting ready, as soon as you leave, we getting ready to go get a new vehicle. What? You getting ready to do what? I said, and I told her, I said, did we not just discuss this? And she was like, well, what am I going to do? I have to have a vehicle, and they're talking, 8 grand. And, I'm not paying for that. And so I said, hold up. I stopped right then and there, and I called um, Michael Cooper, and I called him, and she said, well, it's going to be a wash. I'm going to get it around the same amount as the vehicle that I have. So it's going. So I called Mike. Mike said, "Glad you told me." He said, "Let me put me on hold for a few minutes." Came back. He said, "She good. You can go ahead. You can go ahead and let her do that." And now we're going to settlement tomorrow. But it is true about that, and I'm definitely glad that I thought to call Mike Cooper and give him the heads up way ahead of time, and it
That's
worked
very
out.
that's very good.
That's
And
excellent.
that brings us to number 5. Thou shalt not omit debts or liabilities from your loan application. In other words, and what I like to say in this one is if I'm almost like your attorney, I represent you, your lender is your priest. You go to him and confess all your faults. You tell, and you want to say this to your clients, you want to tell Mr. Cooper everything. His job is to paint the best picture of your application for this big bag of money as possible to the bank. The underwriter's job is to find flaws in your character and in your ability to pay. And even in the contract itself, I've had a underwriter correct. She wanted all of the words corrected because somebody put road, but it was actually street. She found that, and she put a pin in it as a condition for that just to be changed. I've had underwriters who people like Curtis was saying, they go out and make huge purchases, or um, or I know that's not what I was going to talk. The lady, which one is this? I had a young lady. She and her fiance were buying a house, and I got to tell y'all this story because I want you to use my stories if you don't have any on your own. I'm getting some ammunition. She and her fiance were buying a house, beautiful house. There's a pool first with a pool in it. They were both working for one worked for UPS, another worked for FedEx. They was a match made in heaven. They had the same route, so they ended up falling in love, and they were buying the house and getting ready to get married. Well, she didn't confess to Mike Cooper that about 9 or 10 years ago she had a car accident. Well, what happened was she had a car accident, and at first they had found that she was not at fault, made the other person pay. And then a video pops up, and they said she was at fault and she had to pay that money back, and she didn't pay it back and it defaulted on it. She thought it was long gone and nobody would ever see it, so she didn't disclose it to Mike Cooper. We get all the way down to a week before closing, and it pops up out of nowhere. The underwriter discovers it. She was ready to cancel the loan, and what we had to do, and see, this is why you gotta tell Mike Cooper things. You gotta tell him he's your priest. Just confess. No matter what it was, how long ago it was, if it's something that can come up and haunt you, let him know so that he can be ready and prepared to defend you and to make this assertion to forgive this. And this was just a mistake, but he couldn't wave that one away. The underwriter was not having it. But Mr. Cooper, being who he is, and this is what most loan officers would have just said, okay, we deny it. And they would have sent you a denial, and that would have been it. Mr. Cooper said, well, your dad loves you. How about your dad and your fiance? They become the new buyers. We take you all, and then you have a house that you get to live in with your dad and your fiance, and hopefully walk you down the aisle and everything will be good. So now the dad and the fiance are the owners of the home. They got in, and then she just was added to the deed. It's fine. She's not on the loan, but she's on the deed. But you have to be, you have to have a lender that's savvy enough to figure out ways, because most people would just deny you. And this is why we preach about Mike Cooper. He's gonna figure out a way to close that loan. And so we don't want that to happen. Just confess. Tell Mike Cooper upfront everything that's going on. Number 6 is kind of funny. We say thou shalt not buy the furniture. Thou shalt not buy furniture before you get the house. in other words, we had a client, I'll tell you this story. She went and bought her furniture and because she was getting ready to go get a new house. So she believed she had to get rid of everything. She's gonna buy this new furniture and just wait for her new house. It took her a whole year to find a house that could fit that big old furniture with the amount of money she had. She didn't have enough money to buy a house big enough to fit the furniture that she purchased. So we had to look for a long, long time. I stuck in with her for a year, but I learned that lesson. I told her she made the 10 Commandments. All right. Thou shalt not originate any inquiries into your credit. You're not out touching and messing with your credit during this time period. You don't want to get any new credit cards. You don't want to go out and get a new car loan unless you check with Mike. All right. And then thou shalt not make large cash deposits without first checking with your loan officer. Again, this is your priest. He's your consultant. He's the person that's going to help you make these right decisions. So why don't you want to make any large cash deposits? And remember, when you say cash, you're talking about two things particularly. You're talking about the green stuff, the actual cash, that stuff that most of you don't even see anymore. You got to go to the ATM to get it. That stuff. You don't want to put that into your bank account because it's not sourceable, it's not traceable, and it causes red flags for the underwriter. The other thing that's a big no-no is money orders, which we had to learn the hard way because money orders are just like cash. You're just taking cash and going to get a money order, and then you're trying to present that as a sourceable document, and it's not. Because you could have took that money out from under your mattress. And we literally had a young lady who tried to purchase a house and she had money under her mattress. We couldn't use any of the money. She had enough money to probably pay for the house, but we couldn't use it to show a source of income on a loan because it was never in her bank account. Okay. She didn't have a place for it. So what the underwriter might think is that you're doing something illegal. And I don't want to get the bank in a situation with you where now the people come in there with the flashbang things in the middle of the night, blow the whole house up. Then they cart you off for 30 years and you owe us 30 years on a mortgage. Now we got a person that we can't collect from in a house that's all blowed up. We don't want to get into a situation with you. So don't show the green stuff without consulting Mike Cooper. Now I actually had a client last month, and Caramon, you're working with her. She went into the casino and she hit the jackpot. Okay. She called me. She said, I remember the 10 Commandments. I got this money. Now, what can I do with it? I said, call Mike Cooper. Mike Cooper said, ask them if they can give you a cashier's check instead of cash and to give you a receipt of winnings. And then I'm going to show you how to put it into your bank account so that it doesn't cause red flags. So all of that stuff is important. Okay. These are small things, but they're huge and they can definitely set your transaction back.
And they will find it. They will find it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like I had a client, he got money back from his apartment reimbursement, the security deposit. Got the money back, deposited into the account. Michael Cooper was on him. Where's his money? Where does money come from? So he was then able to, make up his document. It came from this. This is why it was there. But I was even like, wow, this was a few years ago. So they're gonna find it.
Cash and money orders are a big no-no. Okay. So that's important. Also, it's very important that if you are going to, if you do the earnest money deposit, and say, for instance, your client is bringing a second earnest money deposit, you want to tell the title company and the lender immediately a ratification that you're not just doing a $2,000 earnest money deposit, you're doing a $4,000 earnest money deposit. So that can be on the altar. Because if it's not captured on the altar statement, you're not going to be able to use that second $2,000, and now your client's going to be upset because they got to find another $2,000 that can be sourced in order to go to settlement. So it's all these little things that you really want to make sure that your client is checking in with the lender. So take your hands when you transfer that file over to the lender. You want everything that they call you, because everything they call you about at that point, 9 times out of 10 is going to be about something that they got to do with the lender. You've already prepped them to create a file and that they're going to ask for the same things over and over. Don't get frustrated. Just do everything they ask you to do as soon as they ask you to do it and cooperate and they'll get you through the process. So refer them back to the lender and say, okay, I hear what you're saying. I understand, but I need you to call Mr. Cooper. Well, I can't get in touch with Mr. Cooper. Well, send them a text message, send them an email and keep calling them. And I will do the same for you. But that's all. The best thing I can tell you to do is please keep calling the lender. Okay, harass him. And sometimes, guys, keep in mind at the end of the month is the worst time to try to get in touch with a lender. If you sending a referral over to Mike Cooper, at the end of the month, he's trying to close 20, 30 deals. At the end of the month, he's not focused on your new person that you just sent over. So don't be impatient. Just know that there's cycles for the lenders. It's like it's cycles for everything else. And at the end of the month, he's trying to close a whole lot of transactions, including some of your colleagues. So it's really not a good time. So you might even want to tell a person that you're going to refer, hey, I'm going to send your information over, but the lender, you're probably not going to hear from the lender until the first of the month on your pre-approval. Just got to know these things. There's certain things that happen. All right. It shouldn't take that long, but sometimes it does. You just got to know what to say to keep your people in the game. All right. Next thing is that do not change your bank accounts. People get frustrated, especially with COVID, because their banks aren't operating the way they normally. You got to wait in long lines. They got to do all kind of things. Can't get people on the phone. Don't know if things are being followed up on. And that's unfortunate, but you can't quit your bank in the middle of the transaction. In other words, you don't want anything in your financial picture to ever change during the 30-day period between ratification and closing. You don't want anything to change, okay? And the last thing we always say is don't co-sign for anyone ever, all right? Next slide, please, Jasmine, because we're finished, and I'm going to move to these rapidly. We tell them, okay, guys, let me help you explain what closing costs is. And you want to say this to your clients. So closing costs, I always, again, tell stories. Back in the day, I don't know how old you are, but when I was growing up, we had records. They had a side A and a side B. Then they had tapes. They had a side A and a side B. Then the disc came, they just was side A, okay, or whatever. They don't have side. But there's a side A and a side B to your closing costs. The side A is your down payment. It's required for you to bring 3.5% to the table on the FHA loan, all right? And you say to them, the only way that you can get help is with gift money from an immediate family member. And I normally say a mother, father, sister, brother, or even your children. But they have to be willing to write a letter saying that this is a gift for you to purchase your house and that you never have to pay it back. What you do after you settle with your home is nobody's business, but you never have to pay it back. They have to give you that letter. And in addition to the letter, they got to be willing to show the bank statement from their bank account where they have the money to give you, because that has to be sourced as well. So you can get gift money to help you with your down payment. But the good thing is you've already put, and if they earnest money deposit for 1%, that 1% represents the first part of that down payment. So now you only owe 2.5% on your down payment side. If they put 2%, well, now you only owe 1.5% on your down payment side. So you want to separate the closing costs. You want to separate it into two categories: your down payment and your other closing fees. Your down payment is what's required by FHA. When it comes to a conventional loan, it could be 10, 20%, 25, 50, depending on if it's an investment. If it's an investment loan, the lenders are a little bit more hesitant. They might make you bring 50% down. Don't worry. If they're doing investments, they might have it. Just tell them what it is, okay? That's what they have to bring on the down payment side. You also want to let them know that there is money for grants and down payment assistance program based upon your eligibility. And then they say, well, am I eligible? They're going to ask you a whole lot of questions. What I say is, listen, your lender is looking into your eligibility. I want you to ask the lender, are you eligible for down payment assistance once we get ratified on the home? Because depending on the home, depending on the location of the home, depending on your credit, depending on the price, all of these things are factors that determine the eligibility. The good thing for you, Mr. Home Buyer and Mrs. Home Buyer, is that your lender wants you to get qualified for grant and down payment assistance. And here's a secret. Here's why. They get a little bonus for getting you qualified. So they want to get you in the program. Don't worry about that. He's going to look into it, but I want you to remind them and let them know that you're interested in it. That's your job. Don't take that responsibility. Let the buyer know that's their job to share that with who? The lender. All right. There's also a provision for ministers and members of clergy. Are you all ministers and members of clergy, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer? Well, then good. I want you to ask the lender about the provision that allows for a one-time gift from the church, if it's done correctly, or from the ministry or whatever, your mosque or whatever, as long as it's collected correctly and and earmarked and specified for you to purchase a home. They can give you a gift. Most people don't know that. Most lenders don't even know that. Again, this is why we like to work with a person that has as much experience and knowledge as Mike Cooper. All right. And then, like I said, down payment on a conventional loan is between 5 and 20%. On a VA loan, there's what's called a funding fee, and that's based on their scale that VA assigns to that veteran who's applying for a VA loan. And so you would just say for the VA funding fee, once we find a house, we get ratified, then you can ask Mr. Cooper to give you a what's it called, a fee sheet? What's it called, Jasmine? Can't think of it right now. But anyway, it'll tell you what your funding fees or what your fees are that he's estimating that you're going to have to pay. Loan estimate. All right. And then that's side A. So we just talked about side A. Now, side B are all the other fees that are associated with your loan. And here's what's wonderful. We already going to ask the seller to pay your commission. And in the good old days, meaning before COVID, we could even ask the seller to then contribute 3% more to your closing costs. We don't do that anymore. They're not accepting it. That's gone. Let it go. There's no more seller contributing anything to your closing costs. If it happens, it's an anomaly. So don't even paint that picture right now. And keep in mind, the market has a voice, and we're articulating what the voice of the market is today. Okay, if it goes back to a place where now the sellers are more, not getting the offers that they want, they might want to give a 3% towards your closing costs, or 2% or 1%. But that typically is gone. Okay, so they're going to give you 3%, but it might be 2.5% towards your commission. So that's good. We can ask for the lender to give a credit. We can ask for the title company, if need be, to make a contribution, and other fees that we can try to chop off. We're going to try to reduce that as much as possible, but you are responsible for that second half. And the down payment mixed together with your closing costs represents the amount of money that you would need to bring to the table. Any questions?
Well, you were acting all strange about being there in 1972. Well, I had a lot to hide.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper.
I was buck naked in the woods.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper.
You got to
Mr.
turn
Porter.
the TV down. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Okay.
Turn the TV down.
I apologize. Can you hear me better now?
A little bit. It's still a lot back.
That might ain't
Go ahead.
good. That's okay.
No, go ahead.
In fact, we wish we could unsee it.
Yeah, Mr. Porter.
Yes.
Okay. Well, my question simply was: is there a percentage that the closing costs usually are that you can kind of estimate?
Well, here's what I like to do, Cameron. There is, but what I like to do, and what I want you all to get used to doing, is referring that kind of information to the lender, because at the end of the day, when we say stuff, they're going to look back at us and say, hey, but you told me it was XYZ. I'm seeing something that represents, something totally different. And I even had that situation today where I had to tell an agent, hey, you've done your due diligence, refer them back to the title company, refer them back to the lender for those fees, because that's not something that's really on the real estate side. Now, for your information, just for you to have it in the back of your mind, guys, it's around 7%. But I don't even like to tell people that. I like the lender to tell people what the percentage is.
Got it.
Yeah, that
Depends on the type of loan. It depends on so many factors that's why it's better to let the lender manage that part of the conversation. I know you being a former loan officer, you want to have that conversation, Kermon. If that's your comfort zone, go for it. But I don't generally recommend that you give out that kind of information, because, like, again, it depends on the property, it depends on the taxes, it depends on their eligibility, it depends on all kind of things. I don't want to give them that picture. I say, hey, listen, guys, when it comes to fees and percentages, I want you to talk to Mr. Cooper. I want you to talk to the lender. So always refer them back.
Got it.
All right. All right. Next slide. If no other questions, next slide. All right. Settlement preparation. And I'm gonna go through this rather quickly just for you guys to know there's some preparations that's gonna be made as settlement. Okay, the title company will provide a clear title work to the lender along with the title insurance. Title insurance is important. It's a kind of a protection that the title company did due diligence and that they cleared all liens and encumbrances from the title. In other words, we say they removed the clouds from the title. You might hear that terminology. All right. The lender then will provide you with a closing disclosure, provide the client. You tell them, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this guy. The lender's gonna give you a CD, a closing disclosure. You have to sign it. Let them know the closing disclosure, the first closing disclosure they did is gonna blow their mind. It's gonna be some huge numbers on there, but they need to sign it and get it back to the lender because that starts the 3-day cycle towards closing. And the reason why I need them to sign that one that has the huge numbers on it is because lenders like to disclose. That's why it's called a closing disclosure. The numbers can go down after after you sign that initial closing disclosure, but they can't go higher than that. So the lender has to disclose the highest possible numbers on that first CD. So you let your clients know. I had a client, first time home buyer. She was a sweet lady. She said, Mr. Porter, I ain't signing that CD. It's too high. I said, remember, I told you that first CD is going to be extremely high. It represents the maximum amount that you would have to bring to the table on this loan, and we have to get you to sign it. And they know where the money is, and they know that you have the money, and you have to be able to demonstrate that you have that amount of money to close if you were required to bring it. But once you sign it, then the lender is going to start applying all of the fees and discounts and credits that we've gotten for you towards your closing. So she was nervous. She was a nervous Nelly. I said, you got to trust me. I got you this far. I'm not going to lead you astray. She went ahead and signed it, sent it over to the lender. She got that final CD about a day before we went to closing. She said, I got another CD, Mr. Porter. They took about $7,000 off. And keep in mind, her closing, the max I think they was telling her to bring was 14 plus whatever other little fees. So now it dropped by 7. She was ecstatic. But you got to get them through that process. Let them know the CD is coming. You have to have these conversations. You got to be a little bit long-winded on pieces that are going to jump out in the transaction so that it strikes them that this is what Mr. Porter told me. This is what Tasha told me was going to happen. This is what Angela said. Paula told me. Rhonda reminded me to let you know. You want them to remember this, okay? And then once you sign off, and you get your final adjustments. You're gonna make before you make any final adjustments. You got to sign that huge CD. That's a big CD. All right. Then the underwriter is going to give you the best 3 words that you can ever hear is a realtor in a real estate transaction is clear to close.
Clear to close, baby.
That means that your plane has a runway. It has a taxi. You can land your plane. There's nothing stopping you. And when they say clear to close, now you guys, you can be all, let me tell you what Mr. Porter did. They say clear to close. I'm calling the listing agent. I'm calling the title company. I need to get on the schedule today. They said, hold on, we just got to clear to close. Y'all should have told us yesterday. It's real busy. We don't mind. We'll wait till 5 o'clock, but we need to be on the schedule today. I'm not going to let that because anything could pop back up. And they say, wait a minute. We know we said clear to close, but we had a little bit more time and this anomaly just popped up. No. We're going to settlement today. I get it clear to close. I'm going to close today, especially on short sales. They take forever. They give you a clear to close. They give you a close that deal. Get in that title company some way, shape, or form. Kick, scream. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, but go to closing as soon as you get the clear to close. I can't stress that enough. Even if you had to say, hey, if y'all can send somebody over to Porterhouse, they can hire, now this is what title companies can do. They can hire a closer. They can hire a person who basically they have what's they called? Notary. They have a notary and they know how to close the file and they can come. They're not part of the title company. They might be a person that they hire, but they can get a closer to meet you somewhere and close that deal. And most title companies won't even charge you for it. They just build it in their fee. So just ask for anything that you can, but get your client to the table that day, as soon as you get the clear to close. I can't stress it enough. Close your deals. All right. Settlement is then officially scheduled. Confirmation is sent to all parties. Then they schedule the wire. Mr. and Mrs. Homebody going to schedule a wire with the bank. At least 24 hours in advance, you need to wire that money in. As soon as you get the instructions you need to be ready to wire that money in. But here's what I want you to do, Mr. and Mrs. Homebuyer. Send me that wire instruction before you wire that money. What I'm going to do is verify that wire is a legitimate wire, because we have hackers nowadays. They're very smart. They create wire instructions that look like the title company's wire instructions, and you send that money to their account, it's gone. Do not send that wire until I verify that is a legitimate wire instruction. What I'm going to do is call people that I know over the title company, and I'm going to read off the wire instructions to them and verify that is the correct count. I want you to do that. I had a client, I said this to him 3 months ago, and sure enough, he got a fake wire instruction. I couldn't believe it. He remembered me telling him that. He said, Mr. Porter, not only did I remember you telling me, but it's something that don't look right about the way this thing is configured. So I'm sending it over to you. Can you check it? I looked at it in 2 seconds flat. I said, this is not real. I notified the title company, hey, you all have a breach of something. You need to do something. And they were able to say, hey, I'm glad you called. This was a $25,000 settlement this man was about to send. Can you imagine? He would have sent $25,000 that we can't get back, it's gone.
Wow.
So you got to be you have to be intentional. You have to know what you're talking about, and you got to remember this stuff in your training. That's why some of the stuff is highlighted, but because we want you to remember to say these things, okay? And then once you do that, you schedule your final walkthrough of your home. And you guys, once you do the final walkthrough, Curtis will tell you the best thing to go do after that, if you haven't already done it, is go get your clients a gift. Reach in your pocket, go get them a gift. Now, you can write off, I think, $55 per person. So if you get a nice gift, you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. Just make sure it's something that you've heard them say or talk about, or as they were walking through, they're like, that's a beautiful clock. Remember things like that, so that you start in your mind, start seeing the closing, so you can know what kind of gift you want to give them. And Curtis gives them the best gifts. I'm gonna close my house with him. I'm just not gonna let him charge me a commission, but because I want the gift. But yeah, Curtis gives. He wrap them. I mean,
now you know what? I gotta disclose. My mom is a phenomenal gift wrapper. Like,
okay.
I mean, she's. So
Okay,
I'll
so
just bring
what
her to
it is,
mom. I'm like, hey, here's the paper. She hooks it up. It looks like, yeah.
When Curtis and I collaborate, when we get to the gift, I say, you buying the gift. I always tell her. But yeah, you want to make sure you do that. You don't tell a buyer that you're gonna give them a gift. You want it to be a surprise, but you want to definitely give your buyers a gift, guys. All right, next slide. I think we're almost at the end. There we go. We at the end. All right, good. Now, I think we got a little bit of time. Let's jump right into the next slide. How do we get to that point? How do we write these winning offers? We're gonna go through this, and we're gonna close out. Don't worry, guys. You're gonna hear this over and over again about writing winning offers. And let me just preface it by saying, in order to write a winning offer, you have to know your information. You got to know your data. You got to know your metrics. In other words, you got to know first of all, what kind of market you're in. Okay. We're in a market now, and let me say this, we call it the COVID market, because before March, we were writing winning offers. We were getting 3% on the commission, or 2.5% on the commission, and 3% closing costs, closing help. And we were writing them as winning offers. Then we were writing them at price. So if they wanted $319, we would write it at $319. We might say $320, just to round it up a penny or so, or $1,000, whatever it was, we round up. But we didn't have to do much more than that. Then all of a sudden COVID hit, and these same beautiful offers that were winning yesterday, we weren't getting calls back or anything. People were almost laughing. Like, we said, we know we sent you over a winning offer, and we were on there we put on the great offer, great overpriced offer. We were saying all kind of stuff on the offers, and or great offer on this property, and people called back, your offer wasn't great. So we immediately went back and revamped. And this is why it's important for you guys to join us on Realty Talks, because Realty Talks is a time where we talk about the market, we talk about what's going on in real estate, we talk about information, and we had a great conversation today. But writing winning offers start with you understanding the type of market. Again, tell your clients, say this, I want you to remember to say this, the market has a voice, okay? And what that means is that just because your cousin was able to do it last year when they bought their house, that was what the market was telling them then. The market is saying something totally different now. The market in COVID said, don't ask for any closing costs. One. Number two, if you want a house, be willing to pay for the house and pay more for the house than what we asking for. Okay. Number three, we're gonna have multiple offers, so you better be ready to negotiate and compete. Number five, you want to make sure that your client's pre-approval amount is not the amount that they start out looking for. And for instance, they got a pre-approval for 400, they're looking for properties in the 350 range. These are the strategies, things you got to think about when writing winning offers. Now, that being said, if your client is looking at a property that's been sitting on the market for a long period of time, and you reach out to the agent hasn't received any offers, they don't get any showings, but for some reason your client loves this house that's just sitting there, then you might be able to say, okay, now I'm going to write an offer that should win because you don't have anything else to compete with. But 99% of the time in this market, doesn't matter. It almost don't matter even what the house looks like. It's just the inventory is so low and the number of buyers has increased because people have gotten their credit together, they're getting pre-approved, they're watching all these commercials while they're at home, they're calling Quicken, they're calling everybody to get these pre-approvals, and they're ready to go out here and find them a house, especially if they're living in an apartment and you want to socially distance. You can't socially distance if you got to walk past Joe's little kids every time you come into your apartment. You want to move. So people want to move, but there's not a lot of inventory. So new housing, new construction is up, and they're not even willing to negotiate. They're not even, in a lot of the new construction, they're not even offering you a full 3% or 2% or any percent in commission. They might give you a basic fee, say take it or leave it with you and your buyer. Okay, so it's a very, I'm not even gonna say aggressive. What I said last year is what I'm gonna say is it's a bloody market. It's a fist fight market. And I don't even want you out there punching nobody, but that's kind of Curtis, you can chime in. From where we came from, this market is vicious, it's dirty. People are doing things. I'm gonna say this, Curtis. People are doing things like taking the key so that the other person can't get in.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different now than when I first started a few years back. And but the thing too, guys, like everything though is 100% negotiable. You know what I mean? So you can negotiate to make that deal happen. So if you do have, a seller, they're interested, but they might push back, as long as that conversation is happening, your foot is in the door of the deal. Don't get discouraged if you gotta drop this, or you gotta take this hit over here. As long as you can kind of keep nudging it right along, and now we're ratified. So everything is also negotiable.
So that being said, it's not impossible. And even if it was impossible, things happen every day, as I said earlier this day, and I expect the possibilities anyway. But what I'm prepping my clients to do is, and I'm saying this in the buyer's consultation, it's a very aggressive market right now, okay? Don't talk to anybody who bought a house last year because they don't know what they're talking about. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you. I want you to get your home. They're going to be houses that we're going to go see. If you love them, everybody loves them. And people are willing to pay way more for the house than probably what it's worth. And then what's even happening still is that even if you make a house, say for instance, the house is $350, Your client is willing to make an offer for 370. That might not be enough. If they're pre-approved at 400, I'm gonna say how high do you really want to go on this particular property? It may not appraise, but these appraisers have been doing some crazy things lately. They've been appraising houses for the value that's far above what the listing price was, and even far above, in a lot of instances, what your comps say they are. And they've even gone as far as to call the listing agent and the buyer's agent and say, send me your comps so that I can include them in my appraisal value before I send out the final appraisal. Now, that being said, now you have to make a decision. Do you want your clients to be obligated to pay the difference between what they offer and what it appraises for? Because the FHA amendatory clause says that they are not going to. FHA is not going to pay a penny more than what it appraises for. Now, a lot of you who have been in real estate before might believe that means that if you have an FHA loan, your client can't pay the difference. That doesn't mean that. It just means that that amendatory clause is saying if the house pays for 370, 350, that's how much we're going to give. Now, if you've agreed to pay 370, even on the FHA loan, you can pay the difference. We just got to remove the FHA amendatory clause. Okay? And your client can pay the difference. But you have to let them know if you're going to have to come up with an additional $20,000 and the 3.5% and your closing costs. Okay? So you got to have them wrapped in mind if you want to get a house in this market. The great thing here, but here's the balance, is that houses, the equity in houses are growing rapidly. Your interest rates are the lowest they've ever been in our country's history. So you're still able to buy a lot of house for virtually a little bit of money, and it'll balance out for you, even if you go ahead and what that then happens is, if your house does, say for instance, if you get in a house and it appraises for 370, but the listing price was only 350, your house becomes a new comp once it's sold for the next house. So your market value is now going up. So the next house might sell for 375. Which means that your house value increases. So you want to show them the benefit so they're not afraid to go ahead and write the offer. Any questions before I go on? Because I'm saying a lot of information, and I just want to make sure I'm not losing anybody. If you have any questions, I'm not moving too fast. All right. Your residential contract of sale is the contract, guys. Yes. Who's in it?
This is Rhonda. I do want to add we may have said this in the past, but it's good to also send in a letter as well with your offer. Because
we're gonna get to we're gonna those are Rhonda, we're gonna get to exactly that. I don't want you to give it away.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. That's the icing on the cake. But I want to focus on this is the cake. This is the cake right here. And then we're gonna talk about the icing. So hold your idea until we get there, because I was gonna ask some other ideas. Okay, just hold that idea. I know where you're going. All right. So the residential contract of sale, guys, for all intents and purposes, all the other things we're adding to it are addendums. Okay, but this is the contract. If you haven't read anything else, I want you to print I think it's 11 pages of this contract, and I want you to read it word for word until you understand it. I want you to do the hard work of reading something. This is the contract, and I want you to read it, and I want you to understand every single part of it, especially what you're filling in, because this is the contract. I want you to read everything in the little boxes. I want you to read everything in the contract. I want you to know this document intimately. If you haven't had a chance to work with it, get to know it. Starts out with the date, very important. Starts out with the seller's name. Always spell the seller's name correctly. If it's Zynex LLC, spell the man stuff correctly, even if they misspelled it. Spelled it the way they spell it. Don't judge it. Spell it the way they spell it. You don't want them to kick it out. They ain't spell our name correctly. How many other mistakes they've made in this? Some listing agents review these contracts and they just critical on them, like a mean school teacher or something. Okay. You want to put the property address correctly. If it's a street, you want to say street. If it's a road, whatever it is, you want to write it all out. You don't want to try to abbreviate. The state, Maryland, is already written for you. Make sure you put the proper zip code, okay? The property is being conveyed in, hopefully fee simple, but fee simple, but that's for you to look up. That's your due diligence, because especially in Baltimore, they are subject to ground rent in a lot of instances. You have to look at the tax record and you have to look at the disclosures to see if there's any information that says that the house is subject to ground rent, because you want to check off the appropriate checkbox. The only way to do that is to do your research as you're writing your contract, okay? If you have to call the title company, call Glennis. We're going to make sure you have Glennis Thomas's number. We're going to put that in the WhatsApp. You call Glennis and say, hey, Glennis, can you check this property address to see if it's subject to ground rent? Because I can't see anything, but I just want to verify because I know that particular area may be subject to ground rent. And she can find it in 20 seconds flat and either confirm it for you. If you don't see it, then you check off fee simple, okay? You want to make sure that you know the amount of the ground rent, okay? Now, ground rent, you could actually have your buyer cure the ground rent, but that's a whole nother thing. But I just want to make sure that number 5 is not overlooked. Then you want to put the purchase price. Listen to what I'm saying. It's very important. If you're making a purchase price of $399,000.00, put $399,000.00. If you're making $399,999.999, then put that. Here's what happened. I made a mistake in my beginning of my career putting $399,999.99 because I thought that the buyer had agreed to go up to that amount. He was saying, no, I only wanted $399,000.00. So guess what? I had to make sure that I compensated him once we were ratified, because he got ratified right away with the $399,999. But he might not have gotten ratified with the $399,000, but I made the mistake. So I wanted to compensate him, okay? Make sure you communicate in writing to your buyer by text, whatever. Say, hey, just want to verify we're doing $399,999.99. Is that correct? Yes. Make sure you start doing things in writing. Don't let your verbal communication cause you money in the contract. Remember, the contract is between the buyer and the seller. You're assisting them through the process, but you want to make sure that everything that you do is in writing. You can go to the next page, Jasmine. All right. Now we move down to number 7, the payment terms. Did I miss something? That's exactly what I was looking for. Payment terms. The payment of I can't read the purchase price, blah, 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 but it says a deposit, an initial deposit. And this is where, you remember I was talking about, you could do earnest money deposit. The earnest money deposit is always the initial deposit. So if your earnest money deposit, 1% of $350,000 is $3,500. An initial deposit by way of, and in that blank space, you put the word check or cashier's check, whatever it is, in the amount of, and then you put the dollar amount of the cashier's check, okay? Now, if your client is doing a second 1% or an additional amount, because I'm gonna do 1% initially, and if you ratify me, I'll do an additional amount, then that's where it goes on the second line. An additional deposit in the way of cashier's check in the amount of to be paid, and you can say at ratification. All deposits will be held in escrow by Porterhouse International Realty Group, guys. This is important. It protects your client. It protects your buyer, okay? Now, if you're on the listing side, you might insist that it be held at the title company. But for the buyers, for your buyers, you always want it to be held at the brokerage. Here's why. And I'm just going to not ask questions because I'm trying to get you guys, I'm going to be respectful of your time. If your buyers, with the brokerage, it requires mutual agreement to release the earnest money deposit to either the buyer or the seller if there's a conflict. If the earnest money deposit becomes a point of contention for some reason in the contract, the brokerage is the safest place for your buyer to have the earnest money deposit. because then the brokerage cannot release that earnest money deposit to the buyer or the seller unless there's mutual agreement as to who gets it. And the buyers should never agree to give their earnest money deposit to the seller, no matter what. Okay. Now there's situations and circumstances where they can try to demand it, but in the brokerage, they're not going to get it. It has to go through the process. We forward it to the court, and the courts make a decision. By the time they get a lawyer, you ain't gonna get it anyway. The seller's not gonna get it anyway. So, you know, it really becomes a non-point. The other thing that's interesting with escrow, and I say this all the time. Now, you don't want to tell your buyer this per se, but you do want to let them know their money is protected. Their earnest money deposit is protected and more secure being held in the brokerage than in the title company. And the reason why is because the title company will release it with a unilateral release, with one party demanding it. The title company will send it, and then if there's any contention, you got to take them to court and try to sue them to get your money back. We can't give it to either party unless they both agree. So that's the good thing about having it in the brokerage as opposed to a title company. The other thing that I like, and I just want you guys to know it for the sake of you guys knowing, escrow is very interesting. What escrow does is quite a few things. It's the earnest money deposit. It's showing your clients, your buyers, good faith to buy the house. It's saying to the seller, I'm going to put this much money up out of my own pocket to secure this house so that you can remove it from the market and agree to sell it to me and me only. And if I default, I'm willing to give you that money. All right. But again, you never have your buyer agree to give the people that money. Okay. Protect your buyer. Okay. So what happens then if they do default? Say for instance, your buyer does default. He just say, I don't want to do it anymore. And he disappears on you. Well, the money he's not going to sign off. You don't want him to sign off for anything to release the money. Okay. And then if the seller then says, okay, well, we're gonna put the house back on the market, but we want that earnest money deposit. And I just had this happen last month. They said we're gonna put the house back on the market, but we're gonna get that earnest money deposit. I said, you can try to get that. We had a long email conversation. Anything you do by this, you want to make sure it's in writing at that point. And I told him, I said, well, you realize that my client, by them having a $4,000 earnest money deposit, owns $4,000 worth of equitable interest in that property, which means in order for that property to be released free and clear to whoever you decide to sell it to after my client, the title company is going to find it as an encumbrance and say, hey, you need to get a release of that EMD if it's in contention before we can sell this property to the next guy. So you can play that game if you want to, Mr. Seller, but at the end of the day, if you really want to sell that property, you're going to have to either get that $4,000 up or take me to court, try to catch my client, get him in court. And if you don't prevail, you know you're going to have to pay his court costs and give his EMD up, or you can go ahead and sell the property to another person and let the EMD go. Okay, now some people are trying to put provisions in the contract that says that you up front are going to give up that earnest money deposit if you default. They're going to put it in there somewhere for your client to initial. Scratch through it. Don't have your client to initial it. If it says if the client doesn't give, the contract is null and void, null and void, you scratch through it. Okay, you have to stand your ground in the contract, especially once you ratify. You got to stand your ground, but you want to make sure that your client's earnest money deposit is secured at a brokerage, at a real estate brokerage on the buyer's side. On the listing side, if you think that the buyers are slippery and they might not really take an offer because it's the best offer that you got, but you want to go after, you want to be aggressive about getting that escrow held at the title company, and you want to do everything that I just said. And if that buyer agent is not wise enough to let his client, to tell his client not to ever initial off or sign off, or that's on them. But we're at Porterhouse, we're going to protect our buyers, okay? All right, the escrow, if you see that little check box, is always in a non-interest bearing account. If it's with the brokerage. Now, that could, even with the title company, is 99%. Okay, It is 99% interest bearing, but you want to make sure that you check. Okay, and you can call the title company and just verify is your company an interest bearing, non-interest, if you have to hold the money in escrow. Now, let me tell you when that might happen. Say, for instance, you're working with a bank. A bank-owned property. The banks don't really like to negotiate with buyer agents. Okay, they just say, okay, we're gonna pull a contract and y'all can go ahead and keep your earnest money deposit if you're not gonna hold it over in the title company. And they serious, they'll mean it, and your client will lose out on the house. In that case, you say, okay, client, we're working with the bank. You're not planning a default, right? Because if you do, you're gonna lose that earnest money deposit, and there's nothing I can do because it's going over to the title company. As long as you close this deal, you won't lose your earnest money deposit, but we got to go ahead and send it over to the title company. That's when you're working with a bank. The other time is when you're working with new construction. When you're working with new construction, they might not allow you to hold it at the brokerage. They might want it to be held with the lender if they require you to use a certain lender. They want you to put it in a title company or the title attorney's thing. So in those situations, you might have to transfer the money over to a title company, but in 99% of all resales, we hold we'll hold it here at Porterhouse. It's safe here, okay? Now I'm asking you guys if you have any questions, because escrow is very important. Other thing I want to say about escrow before I have any questions, if there are any, you cannot use a money order to pay your earnest money deposit. You cannot use cash to pay your earnest money deposit. Okay? Only cashier's check, and they can take a picture of a personal check so you can submit the offer, but they have to turn it into a cashier's check for us to deposit here at Porterhouse. And we like all money to come in as cashier's checks at Porterhouse. The best way to do it. All right. Any questions about escrow, earnest money? Very, 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 very important. All right. Settlement date. The date of settlement is normally 30 days from the ratified contract date or sooner. And it's really not a ratified contract, it's really the date that you write the contract. So if I write a contract today and the day is the 21st, I think, and the day is the 21st, I'm gonna say we're gonna close on February 21st. Now, they might not ratify until 5 days from now. So then when we send over the ratified contract, I'm gonna immediately ask for additional 5 days. So we're gonna immediately strike through that and add 5 days to the settlement date when they send over the ratified contract. That's gonna be one of the counters that the buyer's gonna ask for immediately, so that you have your full 30 days for your lender to get your buyer straight, or sooner. That's why I said when you get that clear to close, go to closing. Some listing agents will be like, well, we're not ready to go closing. That's your business. My buyer's ready, willing and able. We're going to closing tonight. We're going to sign our documents. You need to get the seller to sign off on his documents so we can put this thing to bed. Okay? Or sooner. Remember, it says that. And anytime you need to get an extension, say for instance, you get down the road and the lender, your buyer did a little something crazy, credit score dropping down, the lender needs an extra 5 days, then you're going to still do a change in terms where you're going to extend the date, the settlement date, and you want to also extend the financing contingency because your buyer's still trying to get financing. You want to extend the contingency, the financing contingency, and the settlement date to the new date. If it's 5 days later, you want to extend both, not just the date of settlement, but also the financing contingency, because if your client can't finance, now they can come after the EMD. It becomes in play. You want to always extend that financing contingency. All right. Then you want to check off what type of loan your client is applying for. If it's FHA, if it's conventional, if it's VA, USDA, or if there's no financing, if it's just cash, you put other and you write the word cash in it. But whatever your buyer is doing, you have to articulate it by checking off one of those boxes there below. Now, if within the middle of the contract, we were doing FHA, but we found out that the property, because a lot of times, a lot of these condo units, they don't qualify for FHA because they have a delinquency rate, meaning that people are not paying their condo fees. So FHA won't even invest in those type of communities. They know, go somewhere else. But if the client can be approved at a conventional rate, they might have to bring a little bit more money to the table. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the lender can give them some better credits or do some other things to make it relatively the same amount as what they would have bought FHA. So just see if your client can go conventional if they really want their house. And then if you have to change the financing type, that's your buyer's right. You just have to disclose that my buyer's financing type has changed from FHA to conventional. And you just disclose that as soon as you get approval from the lender, that that's what we're going to do. You send over a change in terms agreement that says that my buyer's financing type has changed from FHA to conventional. And that's it. Now, some listing agents go ballistic. They listen. There's going to be some people that's going in real estate that's going to yell at you and all that. Oh, just don't pay attention to that. You doing what's in the best interest of your client, and you're moving on to the contract. All right. I'm gonna go to number 10, and then I'm gonna put a pin in it. Then we're gonna start talking about other things that makes this basic offer a winning offer. Okay. Financing application. The first blank is basically saying how long from the time you ratified before your client goes and signs the commitment documents so that the lender can start the process. We want our client to go within 5 days from the time that they get ratified to the lender to sign off on their loan commitment documents so that they can start the process of getting approved or less. So they can go to, but this is giving us up to 5 days, okay? Now, the second line is saying, well, how many days do your lender gonna need before he can give us a approval, a final approval? And normally we put 21 days, okay? Now, that being said, if your client is 800 credit score and got all the money in the world, you might want to push the lender and say, hey, we can go quicker than that. We want to go 15 days, or if we want to settle in 21 days. Push your lenders. Don't be afraid. If you need to get the people to settlement, that's what they need. They want to close before they push them. Okay. Remember, you represent your client's best interest, but in general, we put 5 and 21 in those two blanks. Any questions on that? Curtis, you got anything you want to add or anything I missed?
No, I know I've had where the seller has actually wanted me to confirm that we can close. Actually, I don't think that will go here, but the appraisal, to speed up the appraisal. So no, never mind.
Okay.
Yes, something else.
Okay. So okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that. So now this is the basic residential contract still, guys. In order to write a winning offer, you want to make sure that in this section of your contract, that you have articulated the earnest money deposit. That's a major feature. The financing type is very important. Listing agents tend to like conventional over FHA. So if your client has an FHA, you have to know that. And again, that's where you might want to put more money in earnest money deposit down, or you might want to write an offer above far above the expected listing price. Plus, you might want to talk to your client and say, now, if the appraisal comes back and it is saying that your house, the value of the house is 370 or 350, but you put 370 on your contract, I want to put something in one of the addendum that says my client is willing to pay the difference up to $20,000. Now you're starting to show muscle, and really money is the muscle. Time is the muscle. Okay, financing type is the muscle. So you want to flex your muscles and you flex your buyer's muscles in this contract or in the residential contract of sale. Now we start adding addendum. Okay, and some of the addendums, my client is going to buy their own warranty. Okay, my client doesn't want any seller's help. So the seller contribution, we don't want that. Keep your 3% seller contribution. We don't need that. And you want to talk to the lender to make sure the lender says that we don't have to ask for it. Most lenders now, they know if we're gonna get ratified, we can't ask for closing help. So they're doing whatever they can do in order to, mitigate that. But you want to make sure that your client, first of all, his pre-approval is far above what the listing price is, so that he has that leverage to move within that range from 350 up to 400. Just use an example I've been using tonight. And if he has to make it at 370 and he has to bring the difference, can he afford to do that? Is he able to do it? Okay, because you don't want to put him in a situation where he ends up now. And a lot of people will get to the point in your buyers. You got to watch your buyers. They'll say, you know what? I said I want to do it, but I don't. Go ahead and take the $4,000 and I'm walking out. And that's what happened with my clients. They decided at the last minute, you know what? That house ain't worth that much. And if it appraised for that much, I don't think we're going to pay for it. The good thing was that we hadn't ended the inspection contingency. So I used that to get them out. The inspection addendum, that's another thing. Very, very, very important. Jasmine, I don't know if you can get to that page. I don't know if you have that page on the inspection. Now, some of these properties are being sold as is. I don't think, are we out of time, Jasmine? I don't know if we're out of time. Okay, if we can go to 8:45, guys, I'll be done. But I just wanted to give you some really good strategy on the inspection addendum. That's a really good thing. Make sure in the inspection addendum, you put down that you want 7 days to inspect everything that is applicable for your buyer to inspect. Okay, and within that inspection contingency period, there's a section on the inspection where there's a box. Listing agents should be wise enough to cross through that box. But if they're not, make sure that you initial, that is right there, that little box for your buyer. You make sure your buyer initial that box, and you pray that the listing agent is not wise enough to have their seller cross through that box and not initial it. And that was the saving grace for my buyers, because the listing agent had his client initial this box. And what this box says is that within the inspection contingency, the buyer can withdraw for no reason, no stated reason whatsoever. He don't have to say, well, the inspection, we didn't have to send the inspection report. We could just say, we're in the inspection contingency period. We don't want it. We're walking away. We're keeping our earnest money deposit. Thank you. This box is the golden box for your buyer. Okay. You want to write a winning offer. You also want to protect your clients at all costs. Now,
Hey,
go ahead, Curtis.
Real quick, Shay. Now, for that to apply, the seller has to initial as well, right? The buyer, like both parties have to initial.
It absolutely. But if you read it, it still says that they're supposed to strike through it.
Right. Okay.
Right. So they want you to make sure that the seller is not even tacitly approving it. They want you not only not to initial it, but your seller is supposed to strike through it. But we're talking about working with buyers. So the opposite applies on the buyer side. You want your buyers to initial it, and you hope and pray that not only do the seller not strike through it, but that they also initial it. Because this says you got to get out of jail free clause. Okay. Now, that being said, your client say, you know what? I know how to do renovation. I actually am a contractor myself. I don't care about the inspection. Then what you do is you don't initial that section. That makes your offer stronger. Terms and conditions, prices, money, time, shrinking the amount of time to get to closing. These are all exciting to a seller. These people talking about 30 days, but these people can go to closing in 21. And they're going to put an $8,000 earnest money deposit. And they're not going to ask me for any repairs. And I like this offer better than that offer, even though that offer is $10,000 more. I like this offer better. So this is you writing the winning offer. You have to understand the anatomy of the seller, and you got to be willing to push your buyer to his or her limits without hurting them, so that they can get their home. because the goal is to get them into a house. And I dare say, guys, at the end of the day, if you get that buyer into that house, everything else is water under the bridge. They're going to be much happier with you because you got them a house, which is what they started out to do. They accomplished their goal. Then if they don't get a house, but you protected them so much that they couldn't get one. So you have to use a lot of discretion, and you have to have really, and we're going to talk more about this, but I just wanted to tease you. Now, Rhonda, now it's your turn. What else can they do? What else can we do to make the deal look more appealing to the seller?
We can send them a letter from the buyers, basically kind of introducing themselves, letting them know how much they love the house, thanking them for the opportunity to see the house, and hopefully they and they can say things like, in the case with my client, she said, we're a blended family, and we can really see ourselves in the house with our children. And, just basically, you're just kind of letting them know how much you really love the house. And, hopefully we're the chosen one, basically.
Absolutely. So now you're starting to put all of the icing on the cake. Okay. Now you want to decorate. This is a decoration, really. So what you're doing is now the buyer is actually adding an emotional content to the contract by telling the seller, hey, I really love the way you decorated the house. I can absolutely see my family now living. Your taste is impeccable. This is the home for my family. I have 2 children, and one of them, he goes to school and he tries his best, but he's not all that good in school. But I can tell that if we live in that beautiful house in that great community, surrounded by those wonderful schools, my child is going to have an education that's going to make him one of the smartest kids in the school. But we got to get into that community. You just let them put the stink on it, okay? And you send that letter on behalf of your buyer over to the listing agent and ask them to convey and share that as part of the offer to the seller. Now, if you want to put a little more stink on it, you write a letter, and we have the samples in there. Now, we don't intend for you to just type your name in there, but you can. It looks a little generic. But if you take a few minutes and type out the letter that we've already placed in Dotloop, you type it out yourself, and then every time you present an offer, you personalize it. Okay? Just change a few areas here and there to personalize it. You send that sample letter over to your buyer and say, hey, I need you to type something real quick so that I can add to your offer. And then you take it and let them sign it, put their name on it, the kid's name from Mr. and Mrs. Butler and Amari and Jan. And she just write it there and put a little smiley face with a crayon on it. You want to put all of that in there, okay? And then you want to write a letter to the listing agent. And what I like to do, and what we used to do back in the day, and I was telling Talita about this, we used to meet people, we used to go out, take them out to coffee, smooze with them, all kind of things to try to get the listing agent to know you. You want to have a personal encounter with the listing agent. And I dare say you want to do it because, one, you want to get your client's offer accepted. You want that person to know you're an easy person to work with. They're getting 20, 30 offers. They haven't talked to anybody, and everybody they talk to, they only want the mechanics. Hey, did you get my offer? My client's ready to move. Okay, good. I don't know you. Fine. But what I call is, hey, Ralph, how you doing? This is Shay over at Porterhouse. How you doing today? Man, what you think about that election, man? What you think about this? I mean, I'm just starting to talk and have a whole conversation like I know this guy. Man, I tell you, man, I sat up there and I watched the inauguration, man. I tell you, we living in rough times, man. But what you do? Did you see the new numbers that came out? He's like, what do you want? I'm just having a conversation with this guy as though we've known each other forever. And I said, I know you got a lot of offers. Then I get around to it, but I'm just being personal. I know you got a lot of offers on this property. How many offers you get? I can't tell you at this point. I knew you would have me, but I thought I'd ask anyway. But anyway, how's it going for you over there, man? You doing good right now? Everything? I'm glad you're getting all these offers. But my client is the one that submitted the offer, just so you can know. And I done had this whole conversation. Man don't know me from a can of paper. He ain't gonna forget that I took a minute to introduce myself, to have a little conversation with them, to try to make some type of connections, find out I'm trying to find out what church he go to. We go to church, we go to school, where he live at, because I want to make some type of connection with him. I graduated from Bowie State. I knew your name. All you need to do is that connection. You need a connection. Okay. So whatever that connection is, you do. This is part of winning offers. Trust me. This kind of stuff. I had a client, the same client that we sent that almost sent that 25,000 earnest money deposit. That client did not write the highest and best offer for that listing agent. But I had talked to that listing agent for so long. She said, you know what, Ms. Porter, I like you. She said, I'm gonna put a good word in on your offer because I would really love to work with you. And I said, well, if you really want to work with me, I would love to have you come over here to Porterhouse. You know, if you come over to Porterhouse, I don't know how much you're gonna get on your commission, but I know what my commission is gonna be on Porterhouse. If they're only paying you 50% over there, I know if you came over here, you start out with at least 80. And I've started to talk to this woman, and she said, well, I got a whole team. So you think I'm not trying to recruit her and every one of her team, knowing Porterhouse will give me a $300 check for everybody that come in here that I refer? Oh yeah, I'm trying to get her. So that kind of stuff actually helped us win the offer. Okay. The other things that are very important, the font that you choose. Okay. The way that you insert the information into things, make sure it's the same. Make sure you bold certain things and then you don't bold things that you really don't want the seller's eye to catch. You know, all of these things are nuances that you want to make sure. You want to make sure it looks like a picture. You want to make it as pretty as you want to. You want to, in that first, that's where you're at right there, Jasmine. Great offer for this property, but you want that thing to be centered. You want it to be bolded. You want those features to jump right out at the person. You don't want them to have to search through the contract to figure out how your contract compares to the other contracts. You put this document right on top. Okay. All of these are elements of winning offers. Okay. You want your client to spell, you want to spell everything correctly, first of all. Okay. Check through your work. I know you might be in a rush to get it in, but check through your work. Have your accountability partner to look at it with you. It's good for them, it's good for you. Make sure that everything is on it and matches. Don't have that they're not asking for a warranty in one place, but then the other place they are asking for a warranty. The selling agent, the listing agent gonna say, hey, I don't got time to look for that. This don't make sense. Let's move this one to the side. There's some questions on that one. Let's look at this one. Now they done forgot about yours because you didn't take your time. Take your time and write your offers. Make sure everything is in there the way it's supposed to be. Make sure your signatures are everywhere they're supposed to be. And then make sure that you have all of the disclosures signed that the seller has put on the MLS or sent over to you when you requested them. You want to make sure everything is signed in that, but make sure you read those disclosures because you don't want your buyer agreeing to something that they can't do. Okay? But you want to read through everything and have this thing as pretty as a picture. And if it's not pretty enough for you, make it better. Send it to us. We'll incorporate it into the template. All right. Am I missing anything, Curtis and Jasmine? I see you on the line, but I'm done. Am I missing anything?
I have a quick question. It's Angela.
Hey, Angela, what's your question?
This is back on the residential contract of sale. When you were speaking about financing, I know you said there's some situations where, they maybe had an FHA loan, but then they couldn't, so they went conventional. But what happens when you're representing the seller? You get multiple offers, and they like the offer that has a conventional loan, and then that offer is accepted, and then they switch to FHA, and it's written for conventional just because they thought it would be more attractive.
The buyer is the buyer's right. It's the buyer's right.
Okay.
I think it's paragraph 11. I think it's paragraph 11. Here you go. Right there. It's right in front of us. You see that paragraph right there, Angela?
I do.
Paragraph 11, alternate financing. It's the buyer's right. I mean, your buyer, but the thing about it is your buyer is going to come with a pre-approval letter, right? If that pre-approval letter says FHA, then it's FHA. If the and then that might be where you want to go. If the buyer's financing type says conventional, maybe they don't qualify for FHA yet, but at some point within the transaction, they realize, hey, we're not gonna be able to come up with that huge down payment for conventional, and now my time is expired where I actually can qualify for a new FHA, or I might want to use my VA. The buyer has a right to use whatever methods they need to in order to qualify for the loan, because at the end of the day, I know the seller might want it the conventional because it is more secure, and you can take it, but that doesn't mean that once you ratify, that's how you're going to end up closing that deal. But it's right there articulated in paragraph 11.
And that's also one of the reasons too why you want to have that conversation with the listing side, and vice versa. You guys want to have a good rapport and just be cordial, so that if something does come up, that you can reach out to them and be like, look, we're going to get this deal pushed across the finish line. This isn't, we just had to switch from conventional to FHA. Here's the new lender letter, that I got, call Michael Cooper. Let me get you on the phone with our lender. He's going to explain why, just so you keep everything nudging along, because once you're ratified, you're in bed. Y'all snuggled up together. So,
there you go. Well, actually, Curtis, the buyer and seller are snuggled up together. You just stand in Overwatch, okay? but you're absolutely right. But also, guys, we're talking about right and winning offers. But Curtis brought up a good point about making sure you keep that cohesiveness, keep that offer together. For the most productive thing that you can do is to stay as sweet and nice and kind as possible through the transaction. Now, some of us, we don't have the temperament and patience to be sweet and kind and nice, and I get that, but listen, you represent not only your client, you represent Porterhouse before you represent yourself. So make sure if you want to call and yell at and scream at somebody, call and yell and scream at me. But the great thing, here's the saving grace for you. You really don't have to do a whole bunch of what I call verbal gymnastics by way of phone conversations, especially if you're working with an agent and they're not particularly nice to you. You don't have to get into a verbal gymnastic situation with them. You can simply communicate through addendum and contracts. For instance, you send if you have to change something, you send over change in terms, and you say, my buyer needs more time. Here's, please see the attached change in terms. Bam. They're gonna call and say, why? What we don't want to sign that. Listen, they want to sign it. They want their money. They want to go to settlement. The people want to sell the house. They just don't want to extend the terms. But then you say, please contact the lender. Buyer needs more time. And you put the lender's number on there and you just send it over. You don't want to get into any emotional tips and things like that in your contract. And if you find yourself going down that path, have enough awareness to pull back and to reach out for help. Call Mr. Porter, call Jasmine, call Curtis and say, hey, I'm getting frustrated with this, that, and the other thing. You might be getting frustrated with your client, might be. And then sometimes, you might even want to ask your accountability partner, hey, can you walk this through to closing? Because you don't want to lose the transaction because you let yourself get caught up in the transaction. I'd rather you stay on the balcony and guide the transaction through rather than getting down on the dance floor and throwing elbows. It's not a wise thing to do. It damages your reputation. It damages your professionalism, and it's not good for business. Cool and calm heads prevail. And remember, they're going to close. They just might not they might take their time to sign off on it. But when they're faced with either starting over or finishing from where it is, they're going to finish it. All right. So that being said, I'm going to close out, guys. I want to thank you all for your time. I thank you for allowing me to share 3 weeks working with buyers with you guys. Curtis, just want to thank you for just jumping in there and helping us with this part of their presentation.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, thank you. And
I would
guys,
have been on the call anyway.
there you go. Curtis comes
Hey,
every training.
Training. Look,
Yeah.
I'm a new agent. I'm at training.
You're not a new agent. You're not a new agent, Curtis. Get over it. Let it go. Let it go.
I'm
They have
still,
told
hey,
me this
I'm
for the
still
last 3
coming to.
years.
I'm still coming to hey, new agent training. I'll be there because
Yeah.
I'm getting information too from Shayla. I'm still learning. Hey, knowledge,
we're all
guys.
we're all still learning. We're all still
Yeah.
learning. But guys, this is so valuable. This should be so valuable. I want you listen. You're not going to get everything that we've talked about over these 3 weeks right away. Don't okay. Keep coming. Keep hearing it. And the more you hear it, the more it'll resonate with you. And then you're going to hear something said the same thing that we said tonight or last week or the week before. And then it's going to hit you the next time you hear it and be like, oh, that's what that means. And the more you hear it, the better ingrained it becomes into you, it becomes part of your being, and then you're able to articulate it.
Absolutely.
So listen, you guys, I'm gonna turn it back over to Jasmine. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. And please, guys, and I know you know, a lot of you say, well, I don't want to disturb you. That's what we're here for. You're not disturbing us. We're here to help develop you. We want to make sure you grow, make sure your businesses grow, make sure you're successful. All right. And that's what we're all about. We want you to be productive. We want you to make a lot of money. We want you to set your goals extremely high. We want you to, if your goal doesn't scare you when you write it, your goal is not big enough. I want you to write some scary goals for yourself and then ask us to hold you accountable to them because you would absolutely accomplish them. You were absolutely conscious. 6 years ago, you couldn't have told me that if I left a career of being a principal for 10 years, educator for 20, to walk totally away from it 100% and jump into real estate, that I would be a broker owner. You couldn't have told it. It doesn't even really happen. People told you it's impossible. Impossibilities happen every day. And I want it to happen for you tomorrow, and I want it to happen for me tomorrow and today and the next day. But I gotta write scary goals for myself. And I'm gonna hold myself, I'm gonna push myself, I'm gonna push you guys to those goals, and you're gonna thank me for them at the end. And that's what you're doing with your buyers. They're gonna give you a scary goal, something they never, most time, in most instances, they've never done before. And you hold them accountable. You push them all the way to that goal. And you make sure you do everything you can to get them across that line. And they'll thank you for it. They'll thank you for it. So with that being said, you guys have a wonderful night. Be productive. Remember, January 25th, 7:00 p.m., we're having our annual sales meeting. Is when we talk about who our agent of the year, quarters, and all that stuff, and talk about, you know, what we did last year, what we were able to do, how successful we've been. Even in the COVID market, you guys will be very surprised and very excited, and it should give you a lot of motivation to grab everything you can this year unapologetically, but do it safely. Remember, we are in the midst of a pandemic. So put your mask on and get out there and make your money. All right. We are essential personnel. Thank you, Governor Hogan, state of Maryland, essential personnel. So let's go out there and do what we have to do. With that being said, good night, everybody. God bless you. I'm going to stop this.